So I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with the KCTCS Essential Standards. They are the 21 minimum standards that all the courses across our system that are taught online are expected to meet. They're drawn from the Blackboard Exemplary Course program rubric. And speaking of that, we commonly refer to that as the ECP. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of awesome faculty who have allowed us to use their courses for these demos. So the first is Lorraine Sturgeon, who teaches at Owensboro, and she's sharing her business employability seminar course. Lorraine is also a colleague of mine in the Office of Online Learning. She works with accessibility, which is going to be our topic today. And then the other person I want to give a shout out to is Dr. Wheels Conover from Southeast Kentucky, and he's sharing his Chemistry 1 course with us. And then the third course that I'll be using for a demo is Cool Academy, which is a course that I designed. It's a year-long program to help faculty build an excellent online course and actually build to a level where they meet the standards of the Exemplary Course program and can submit to that program to see if they get an award. So with that, let's talk about our subcategory. We are talking about accessibility of course design, okay? There are 4 standards in this subcategory. They are all, well, 3 of them are very closely related, and then we will talk about the other one, which is a little bit more broad and a little bit more to do with sort of your teaching strategies. But we're going to start with standard 1.13. The design and delivery of content integrate alternative resources, for example, transcripts, or enable assistive processes, for example, voice recognition, for those needing accommodation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read standard 114 as well before I jump in and start doing some demonstrations, because they're very closely related to one another. Standard 114 says that course files, such as documents, PDFs, and presentations, are easily readable by assistive technologies, such as screen readers or screen magnification. And so with both of these standards, while on the surface it looks like you would be needing to do a lot of extra work to create all these different types of formats for your content, that's actually not the case. Your learning management system, the applications that you use to create documents, as long as you're using standard applications like, for instance, Word or PowerPoint, and just in general, your browser and your computer that runs with Windows, all of those work together to enable these assistive technologies that are referred to in both these standards. And so in both those cases, where your work comes in, the piece that you do have to pay attention to is how accessible your documents that you're using are before you ever upload them to the LMS. Let's start with this chemistry course. Okay, so you've got the nice course in here with, it's set up in modules, it's set up in Ultra. So even from the very get-go, you're fairly kind of locked in terms of what you can even add to the course. And that's intentional, because what that does is kind of force you to only include things and only work in a way, for the most part, that is accessible. So I'm going to start by showing you an example, for instance, with video, when we're talking about assistive types of processes, okay? So what is the thing that you frequently hear when we talk about video? Basically that we also need to include either captions or a transcript when we're providing video resources. And so that's for students who, for whatever reason, maybe they are students who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it could also be because you've got students who are maybe working in an environment where they can't actually play sound loudly, and so they need to be able to read a transcript. And so Dr. Conover here has actually included for each of the videos in his course, and I'm not going to click on these because they open in a separate window, and I'd have to jump between sharing screens, but each of these is hosted in YouTube. And then he also provides an actual, just a straight up transcript of each of those videos as a separate document that students can very easily either just read online within Ultra, or they could actually download this, print it out, download it, and open it somewhere else on their computer. You can see here we've got screen magnification as an option. And it's just these types of very simple, very automated types of assistive processes that we're talking about when we talk about 113 and 114. Okay, so here we are in the Cool Academy course, and I want to show you in here the difference between a Word document that has been checked for accessibility before it was loaded into the course, and then a Word document that's not accessible. Okay, so I'm going to go to, I believe it's in course organization. Might need to bear with me just a second. Yes, here we go. So we have information about a schedule here, but then we have a weekly schedule that gives a little bit more detailed information. And as you can see here, this has a perfect accessibility score. I will show you Blackboard Ally, which checks your accessibility score for you in just a second. But the reason this has a perfect score is because I made sure before I ever put it into this course that it was accessible. I used Word's accessibility checker to do that. But so you can see not only are we getting a perfect Ally score, but because it's accessible, alternative formats is a feature that you can use to enable students to, for instance, I'll actually go ahead and click on this, download a different format for this document, whether it's an HTML document, they could actually get an audio file. There's a thing called Beeline Reader, which makes changes kind of the contrast and the colors of a document to make it easier for some students to read. So with these alternative formats, all you have to do is pick the one that you want to use and download it. And by you, I mean the user, like the student in this case. Download it, it goes into their computer's downloads folder, and then they can access it from there. You don't have to do anything as the person building this course and putting those materials in the course other than, like I said, making sure that it's accessible. And in just a second, I will show you how you do that. I'll give you an example in a Word document, but it works the same in PowerPoint, it works the same in Excel, and those are the most commonly used applications. So let me go down. You've seen what a document looks like when it is not, or sorry, when it is accessible. Let me show you what happens when we've got a document that is not accessible. So this is a lesson that's included in Cool Academy that's actually teaching the participants to fix accessibility issues in a document. So I very intentionally put an inaccessible document in here. Like I built mistakes into it and then loaded it in. So you can see here, I've got a very low accessibility score for that reason. That's because it's not accessible, which means it's not going to be accessible for assistive processes, screen readers, and that type of thing. And it's also, the alternative formats will have a very difficult time parsing out the information in this document. Okay, so let me stop sharing that, and then I'm going to go to a separate window here, and I'm going to show you how you can check the accessibility of a document. So this is actually an accessibility checklist that we have for Word. And so, as I mentioned, this applies across the board, whether you're using Word. PowerPoint has a similar option, but you want to go to the review menu, check accessibility, and then click on check accessibility, and you're going to get a quick little report that tells you whether there are accessibility issues in the document. Okay, so you really do want to use the tools that you have as at your disposal. One question that I frequently get is regarding PDFs. There are actually similar, they're not identical to Word, but there are similar accessibility tools so you can check your PDF accessibility. It is often easier, if you can possibly do it, to remediate files in Word. So, you know, it can be a little challenging to remediate a PDF, and in some cases it's actually quicker, even if you don't have it in Word, to try to recreate it in Word rather than trying to remediate that PDF itself. And so let's look at alternative text. That's another one that is really, really important in terms of enabling you to use screen readers. So let me share. I'm going back to this Chemistry 1 class. Okay, so this is where we are. And I'm going to scroll down to a module overview here from the first module. And I just want to show you, okay, so a screen reader is going to read text, okay? It doesn't read images themselves unless you put alternative text in. And so in a case like this, where, you know, this is a really important statement because it's establishing relevance for the student for why this information is even important. So, you know, we don't want, for instance, students who are blind or cannot, you know, have problems seeing, we don't want them to miss out on this information. So let me, going to edit this, and I want to show you in a case like this where you have an image with important text in it, you actually just want to include that text verbatim, okay? So I'm going to click on this, and first I'm going to read the first portion of it. This is an introduction to measurements in chemistry, etc., and so on. If we look at the alternative text in here, this is an introduction in measurements or to measurements in chemistry, and so on and so forth. So you can see that that alternative text reads exactly what's on that image. So no one's going to miss it if they're using a screen reader. Okay, so that is an example when it's meaningful text. Another example that can make it very handy for students who are using screen readers is to mark an image decorative. So here we go, back to Cool Academy. So if we go to, let's start with maybe introductions, module overview. Okay, so we already have a page header that says this is a module overview. So in this case, this information is actually redundant. So we could mark that as decorative. I'm not 100% sure it will be, but it's certainly an option that makes it so that when someone's using a screen reader, they're not going to hear the same thing repeated twice. They've already picked up module overview from the header. They don't need it again. This is purely for people who would actually see the distinction. So you do have that option. I want to give you the caveat though, only use that if it truly is decorative. We're going to skip one of the slides and go to 1.16. I'll come back to 1.15 in just a second. 1.16 also is talking about pretty much automated design factors. So 1.16 says design factors such as color, text size, manipulations, audio and video controls, and alt text reflect universal accessibility considerations. So, you know, when I was showing you, for instance, the the magnification and reduction when we were looking at the video transcripts. That's one example of this feature in action. I want to show you, hopefully I can get it to work. I want to show you how the actual alternative formats work though, because that's a really important piece that goes along with this standard plus the previous two that I was talking about. Okay, let's go back in here and we will try to find that schedule again. And you know, a lot of times faculty will complain about how locked down and streamlined Ultra is. It is set up that way by design, okay? It's so you've got limited color choice, for instance, so that you cannot pick colors that don't have sufficient contrast for certain people who are looking at it, you know, people who are maybe colorblind or people who are low vision. Text fonts are limited in terms of fonts that are readable. Our preset formatting is set up in such a way that you're going to use fonts that are highly suitable for an online environment. There's been a little bit of the ability to personalize some of that in, I don't know, in the past probably year or so with some of the more recent updates to Ultra. But it's really, that's the reason it's locking you down. I know that's a question, especially for those of you who have worked a lot in Blackboard Learn Original, where you didn't have as many of those guardrails. Okay, so I wanted to show you again the alternative formats. I will just pick the Beeline Reader and download it. This might take a minute, so I'm going to let that do its thing. And then while I'm doing that, while we're waiting for that, let's take a look at our accessibility gauge here. Okay, so anybody who doesn't know about the Ally Accessibility Report, this is just such an essential tool as far as helping you make your documents accessible. Okay, so it's automated. You can access it from the little gauges, as you can see, the little gauges that are by each course element. You can also access the entire report through Books and Course Tools, and you are looking for Accessibility Report. There's our little very stylized A, ally sign. And then that's going to give you a score, and it's going to give you overall information about things that are flagged in your course. Okay, so use that. It will make your job 100% easier in terms of making your documents accessible. So let me stop sharing here. There we go. This is what the Beeline Reader looks like. You can change this so that you've got different colors and backgrounds. I don't know why it's not changing. There we go. And this is just for certain readers, this can be a really helpful way to distinguish between words and follow along when they're reading. Okay, so that's an example. All I had to do was make sure my document was formatted correctly and then pick it from the alternative formats. Okay, so the last of the standards that we're going to talk about here is, I'm not going to lie, you all, this is probably of the KES, it's my least favorite standard just because it tends to confuse people. Okay, this is under Accessibility of Course Design. It's standard 115. Course materials support multiple learning preferences. Pay attention to that. Preferences, not learning styles. Multiple learning preferences. For example, visual, seeing, auditory, hearing, kinesthetic, moving, and tactile, touching. And the reason I don't love this is because people do get confused and think of it in terms of learning styles, which for the most part is complex, controversial, in many ways a debunked way of thinking about teaching and learning. And so when we're talking about preferences, what we're really talking about is just giving students options as far as lots of different ways to access materials, lots of different ways to work through content and concepts. And so, for instance, what you want to, I'm going to give you an example of what not to do, which is to have every single unit in your course be read a chapter, take a test. Read a chapter, take a test. That is a very flat kind of single preference kind of way of approaching teaching and learning. Instead, you just want to offer a bunch of different options: video, text-based, PowerPoint, websites. And so you can see we've got lots of different ways to access different pieces of information here. We've got Essential Ideas, which actually links out to an open educational resource textbook, which is web-based. You've got PowerPoint slides. You've got videos with those transcripts. And then let me collapse that window and scroll down. Then you've got hands-on application projects where they're actually getting in and really working with the concepts in a very real-world way. And you've got homework sets where students are working through, again, very actively working through specific concepts. And this actually links out to the Newton Alta homework that is part of the course. And so what many faculty will frequently ask is, does every single thing in my course have to cover every single learning preference? And the answer is no. It depends on what's appropriate for whatever your instructional objective is. They're not all going to fit. But this is a way for you to provide a lot of variety. And the other two demo courses, we're running low on time, so I can't show you, but it's the same thing. There's just a mix of what students are doing to access the concepts and the content in the course.